Welcome back. Still working in the garage from last week's episode, and we're just organizing my tackle and you know, over the years of learning what works the best, it really, you just keep modifying and keep modifying. And if you remember back on the first video, we're talking about just becoming a tournament fisherman. I want to emphasize, we don't need to start here. So this is an accumulation over several years of fishing, and this is just a way that has helped me stay organized. And last week we were taking rod holders off the walls because we were going to lay them horizontally instead of vertical. So stay tuned. Come with me to the rod wall. Now my rods are horizontal on the rod wall instead of being vertically. And so with them being horizontal, I can get more rods, and then I can keep them even more organized. And then crappie fishing, you use anything from a 6-foot rod to a 16-foot rod or 18-foot rod even. And now I can come to my rod wall and grab and keep everything organized and keep all of my Janko fishing rods organized. And it's really cool when you order from Janko, you get your rods in these rod covers, and just really nice. And this happens to be the new X13. So I'm keeping that one in the rod cover. And so I just take it down here, put it on, and this is the one I've got rigged up. It's the X13. It's out of the pack here. Got the composite handle, the Tony Shepard X13. And so for all you live scopers, and this is a critical length rod to be able to catch them. But I keep all my Janko rods nice and neat now on the rod wall here. So really cool. Like I said, I've gained. You wouldn't think you would gain more room with it laying down like this, but I actually have all of my rods now up off the floor. I had extra rods. They're all nice and neat and organized. And so I'm ready to go. And I can load the boat from here, unload the boat, and just keep everything nice and neat and keeping my rods safe from getting broken. So guys, I'm really excited. This is series number 2 on how to become a tournament fisherman. And I'm really excited to take you to that next step. And we're going to do a little review of what was in the first video. We're going to move on to the second series of becoming a tournament fisherman. Stay tuned, stay with me. You'll want to take notes. Welcome back to this video series of how to become a crappie tournament angler. And we're specific in this video series about crappie fishing. So help develop those skills to get ready to launch into your day one of fishing a tournament. So just a real quick recap of last week. We talked about having the rods, the reels, the line, and the tackle. And so now I want to preface this with when we're going to go out and we're going to practice, and there's going to be some time we talked about having a 5-year plan, a 5-year goal. And so over the 5 years, now this is only going to be 2 or 3 videos, but this is going to be over 5 years. So give yourself plenty of time to be able to practice and hone those skills to get yourself ready to be a tournament angler. So on this week's video, we're going to talk about, we've got the basics, and we're going out and we're fishing. And so what are we going to fish? And so we talked about taking notes about weather, the conditions, the water temperature, if you have the availability, the water temperature, the conditions outside, the air temperature, and making sure you're logging everything. And when you're fishing with the line, you're going to do, 6-pound line, 4-pound line, anything like that. that's the, make sure you're writing notes down to see how these things are going to perform. What I'm talking about is making sure that every time you go out fishing, you're checking your equipment and how it's performing. And also you're logging, hey, am I getting better at this? And so while you're fishing, make sure you're still reading. You're still watching YouTube videos. You're still learning from everything that you can possibly learn from, and to be able to get out on the water and apply some of those skills. And so when you're casting, how's the wind affecting your casting? Is the angle of the dock or the piece of wood that you're casting to, are you positioned right? So let's take that. And so we're going to fish wood today. And there's a lay down log that starts from the bank and goes into the water. And you've determined that log is maybe 5 or 6 feet deep, or even 10 feet deep at the end of it. So we're going from nothing, 0 foot of water, to 8 foot of water or 10 foot of water. This is going to give you a great opportunity to say, hey, what depth are those fish today? And so when you're in your boat and you're approaching that log, where do you start? Do you start super shallow, or do you start super deep, or how would I approach that? So you're going to set your boat up. You don't want to just ram your boat into the log and you start fishing. You're going to need to have stealth, and so you're going to have your trolling motor turned down low on a low speed, and you're just kind of drifting. If the water, a lot of folks have power poles or those types of things. If you have those, be ready to use them and put them down to slow your boat down, to stop your boat so you can fish efficiently. I like to approach a lay down. I fish it from the outside, shallower. So I'm going to start on the very end, the very tip of that tree in that 10 foot of water, and I'm going to start deep, and I'm going to fish deep to shallow on the tip of that tree. So that way, just because you're out in that 10 foot of water doesn't mean those crappies are 10 feet deep on that tree. They may be sitting above the top of that tree. So they may only be 2 or 3 feet or even 4 feet above that tree underneath the water. And so you need to start out and start deep and work your way shallow. Once you feel like, I've given the end of this tree 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20, 25 drops or cast up there, and I haven't gotten bit. So now you can ease your boat in a little bit closer to the tree and start fishing the shallower water up that log. But if you go crashing in and you start at the very shallow part of that log, you've already spooked everything out at the end of that log. So just start out around and in front of that tree and work your way in. And you're going to make mistakes. You're going to come hard into a tree, and create a bunch of waves and make a bunch of noise. Well, there will be another tree. There'll be another log. There'll be another limb. Just practice on keeping yourself quiet, your boat quiet, and your presentation quiet. You don't want to just be plopping your jig and your cork in there and making a bunch of noise. So just be aware that the crappies are very sensitive to noise and boat presence. A lot of folks are finding out that with live scope, they're seeing the crappies react to their boat. And so we've learned that we have to be much quieter in the boat. You're not stomping around the boat. You're not slamming things around the boat. Now, I will fish. I have a radio in my boat. It's a built-in radio. And I'll have that radio on, but it's real low. And I'm not jamming. I'm not out there partying or anything like that. And, I come into a channel and they're like, hey, the party's here. But I'll have it on light. And on tournament day, I've got no music on whatsoever. So if I'm fishing real super shallow and I'm getting up in them trees and it's real shallow, it's early in the spring, I'll even turn my depth finders off because I don't want my depth finders. The transducer makes a pinging noise. And so I will shut the depth finders off if I'm in a couple foot of water or less, and I'm set real shallow, and I get up in that real skinny water. I've got everything off, and so you just want to be as quiet as possible when you're trying to just ease that boat up into what you're trying to fish. So now we have went from the first video talking about the very basics and having a very basic setup and a few jigs and those types of things, and now we're starting to apply that to we're fishing. We're aware of our surroundings. We're aware of how much noise we were making. We're aware of the wind. When you're running a boat, you have to be aware that, hey, there's a big gust of wind. And you can hear it in the trees. Sometimes you can hear it coming. Well, if I'm positioned on a log and I'm not anchored down, I got to be ready to be on that trolling motor. So I've been fishing with different people and teaching them how to run a trolling motor. And I'll say, hey, you feel that air on the back of your neck? You feel that wind, that little bit of a gust of a breeze? You feel that on your neck? You need to be responding with the trolling motor. You need to be able to be getting ready to put your boat in position to stay on that log, especially if you're catching fish. So we're aware of our surroundings, we're aware of what's going on, and we're trying to be as quiet as possible. So when you're going to make that adjustment with the trolling motor, there's a prop on that trolling motor. Do not aim that prop at your structure that you're fishing. Try to make the adjustment with the boat. Put the prop away from your structure. That way when you hit the prop or hit the button to make the prop go, the wash goes away from your structure. Do not let that wash go into your structure where you're fishing, because you're going to blow it out. If you're fishing shallow, you're going to blow mud up in there. And if you were just catching really nice crappies out of there, you're not going to catch them any longer. So it's going to be absolutely critical that you're aware of where that prop is positioned. That way you're blowing the wash away from your structure. So again, being aware of how you're stepping in the boat. When you shut your compartments in your boat, shut them easy and gently. That way you're not transmitting a bunch of vibration out into the water. So you're going to hear me talk a lot in today's video of how to quiet yourself down. And when let's say you got a partner in the boat, you're taking somebody fishing with you, I have a very loud voice. So I have to try to remind myself, hey, don't talk so loud. Okay? And that you're in tournament mode. And that's where I'm getting you to thinking about, I'm in a tournament, I need to get those bites. We're not just out sitting on a bucket or in a lawn chair along the bank just fishing and hoping we get a bite. We're going, and then part of this video series, I'm teaching you how to go in and make those fish bite and get those bites that you need. And so all of this together is going to help you get more bites and get more fish in your boat. So we're quieting everything down. In my compartments in my boat, it was just the plastic liner inside where I put my tackle. And I actually put some insulated styrofoam squares in the bottom. That way when I put a box away, there's not that plastic hitting plastic. It's actually hitting something soft, and we're not transmitting that noise all out. So even when I'm putting the trolling motor in the water, I'm not just slamming the trolling motor in the water. I put the trolling motor in, I put it in easy. On my boat, I have power poles. And my power poles have settings of how fast they go in and out of the water. I typically have them on medium, but I typically will put it on slow. That way they don't splash into the water. So if I'm fishing a lake that has pad flats, and I'm fishing those pad flats, and there's only maybe a couple foot of water on those pad flats, I'm putting the power poles down in the water quietly. So we're walking in the boat quietly. We're maneuvering tackle in and out quietly. We're not slamming lids. We're being very aware and controlling the variables that we can control. Things are going to happen. You're going to make noise. Things are going to happen. But if you're aware of what you're trying to do and trying to keep things quiet, move methodically through the boat, making great casts and presentations quietly, your opportunity to get more bites is going to increase. So everything that you could learn from when you were a child, being on the bank, fishing off of a bucket or on a chair, we're going to take that and we're going to scratch all of that. And now we're going to move in and we're going to be super stealth. And so you still have your rod, your reel, your line, your tackle. You still have your basics. And now we talked about positioning on a log and how or a tree, a lay down in the water, how we position how we attack that tree. We attack it from the outside in. That way, once we've worked in, you know, we've established that maybe there's no bites out in the front, and then we get up and they're real shallow, and we've not spooked those fish. So you give you ample opportunity to catch all the fish that's on that lay down log. And so what the cool thing is that you're going to be able, if you find those fish at 2 feet deep on that log, most generally you can go and repeat that pattern throughout the areas of the lake. So if that log was in 10 foot of water, the end of that was in 10 foot of water, and maybe down the way you got 2 or 3 more logs that are in the exact same position, you more than likely you're going to be able to repeat the success that you have. And so just remember, each log you approach it the same, quietly, slow the boat down, don't go crashing in, don't be slamming the trolling motor in, and I see this all the time, guys, and it's I call it a super rookie mistake. They're driving their boat, they got the big motor on, and they drive right up to the spot. And so you got the motor running, you got the momentum of the boat, and then they got to put the trolling motor in, and they got to do all that stuff. So I can't stress this enough. If I've got a log in the water or a lay down piece of structure, I have already shut the motor off. I've got the trolling motor down in the water 50 yards before I even get to that spot. And I am coming in quiet. And that way I'm in control of the boat. The boat's not in control of me. I've got everything situated. I've unstrapped the rods. Even unstrapping the rods, I mean, you can make a bunch of noise doing that. And I've got everything ready to go. And we slide into that piece of structure and we fish it in a controlled fashion. So we're repeating that and building what we call in tournament fishing a pattern. So you catch them at 2 feet deep on the log, you go to the next log, they're 2 feet deep. Go to the next log, they're 2 feet deep. Now you've got a pattern, and you're putting that back in your brain, in your storage, because maybe you're out practicing for a tournament, and the tournament's the next day or a couple days from then, and you're like, hey, I found fish 2 feet deep on these logs, and we fish the tournament tomorrow or a couple of days. We should be able to go repeat that process. I still, on tournament day, when I approach that log, I approach that log, I fish the exact same way when I was practicing. I'll start on the outside, then work my way in. Crappies move. They move all the time. And so the next thing I'm going to talk about is pressure. And not necessarily fishing pressure, but barometric pressure. And so you got highs moving in, you got lows moving in weather-wise. That's going to cause those fish to move up and down in the water column because they want to be comfortable. So maybe when you were practicing, they were 2 feet deep, they were comfortable there. And I'm going to tell you, something always happens with the weather when it comes tournament day. And so if it gets colder, or the front, now the wind's coming out of the north instead of the south or out of the west, it's going to change those fish. So they may have moved to 4 feet deep on that log. So you go crashing in or go right over on top of them to go fish the 2 foot of water. They're not there, and you're like, oh, they're not biting today. Or they must have moved. Now, well, they moved, but they didn't move off that log. They're still in that log. They're just a little deeper. But you done run the boat over top of it. So fish your way into it, and you're like, oh, hey, I'm getting bit now 3 or 4 feet deep. Catch the fish that you can catch. Go up and make sure you're checking that 2 feet. Go up 2 feet, not getting bit. So now on that tournament day, you're moving to log to log to log, starting outside again, working your way in, and that way you're not messing up the pattern. And you're like the new pattern for tournament day, they're 4 feet deep and not 2 feet deep. And I know we've really covered a lot here in just a short amount of time. And that's why the great thing about watching videos is you can stop them, rewind them, take notes, and however you learn the best or retain the information. And then that way you're watching it now and you can be able to take it out and apply it out on the water. So this video, we're talking about setup on a piece of structure, your boat setup. If you're running an aluminum boat and the bottom of the boat is aluminum, you may want to consider putting some sort of, either like indoor-outdoor carpet squares or some sort of, like I had the foam insulation boards in my boat inside the compartments. Just mainly where you're going to put maybe your tackle box or where you're going to put your feet. That way you can deaden the noise and be able to be more stealthy moving in and to be able to fish your structure, your lay down logs or your trees or what have you. And so when you're crappies, when I would talk about the logs or lay down trees for just a minute, and you say, well, why are they there? Well, they're there for a multitude of reasons. They're there because of shade. They're there because of the moss that's on the logs draws the bait fish in. So the bait fish are there, the crappies are going to be there. And so you'll hear people say, hey, you always fish the shady side because it hurts their eyes, or the shady side because they're, that's where you're going to catch them. And that's true to a point. They can actually see better in the shade part of the log. It's not necessarily that it hurts their eyes, but the water clarity and such for a fish on the shade side of a log, they can see the contrast of the bait that you're trying to present to them, or they can just see the bait, period, better if they're in the shade side. So when you're setting up the fish on the log, make sure you're fishing the shade side. Because if the sun's beating down on that one side, they're probably not going to be there. They're going to be in the shade where they're more comfortable and they can see better. So just keep that in mind on your trip out. Guys, I think I'm going to stop there because that's a lot of information to divulge and also to digest and to maybe take notes. And this may be exactly how you're fishing right now, or this may be brand new. You never thought about all the noise, the barometric pressure, setting the boat up perfectly, as perfectly as you can get on that log. If your boat positioning is everything. And so, guys, just really make sure you take good notes. And I think these tips in this particular video is going to be extremely helpful in you getting more bites and putting more fish in your boat. Guys, if you're liking this material, make sure you hit the subscribe button and hit that like button. And the next video that's in this series is going to be really, really cool because we're going to really start talking about fishing different types of structure. The next video, we're actually going to talk about fishing boat lifts and docks. And how we fish boat lifts and docks is not how we just talk about fishing wood today. And we're going to talk about why it's important in boat positioning for that as well. So guys, if you have any questions whatsoever, make sure you drop comments down below. Any type of questions that maybe we haven't covered yet in the videos, and I'll make sure that we cover those in the videos and I'll answer those questions. The comment section is something that you want to see. Maybe we haven't covered it yet, and we'll make sure we get it out for you and we get those questions answered. And so don't hesitate to drop a comment below. And guys, really excited you came back and following this video series. It's starting to look like maybe it's going to be 3 or 4 videos now. So guys, I had a great time. Can't wait to talk to you next week.